after every other ministry and department have had their presentation, because Ministry of Economic Planning basically represents the director of the orchestra, right, coordinating all ministries to ensure that we achieve major performance in government under the leadership of our able governor. As a mandate of the ministry, we are responsible for formulating and coordinating economic policy and development plans and programs across the state. In other words, we are the custodians of statewide strategy. So we formulate the strategy working with the aspiration of the governor, and we drive that strategy for achievement. We are also involved with ensuring policies are informed by an effective mechanism of efficient statistical data. In other words, as we develop policies, it's important to MEPB that those policies are evidence-based and are supported by data. In addition to that, ladies and gentlemen, we are responsible for coordinating our various development partners across the world and in the country to just ensure that there's prudent allocation, usage of such partnerships, and leveraging those partners as they want to contribute to the development of Lagos. It's our role also to aid the delivery and the efficient implementation of the state budget to ensure prudent allocation and utilization of state resources. We also ensure that we control those approved budgets for performance through our monitoring and evaluation mechanisms on the revenue side and on the expenditure side, working directly with all the MDAs to ensure we achieve an overall performance in our budget situation. Having said this, therefore, it is difficult to talk about the Ministry of Economic Planning and Budget without having to talk about various statewide achievements. In our view, if the MDAs succeed, then the Ministry of Economic Planning and Budget would have succeeded. And if the MDAs fail in any of the pillars of government, then the Ministry of Economic Planning and Budget cannot be excused. But as we always tell ourselves in the Ministry of Economic Planning and Budget, that I will succeed, the Ministry of Economic Planning and Budget will succeed, Lagos State as a whole will succeed. So, just to take us through some of the highlights of my presentation, MEPB is both a custodian and coordinator of the agenda, the 6-pillar agenda of the government. Our job also includes evaluating the performance of all the MDAs statewide. So the first one, which I'm sure we've all heard about, and we've in fact heard about all 6, you recall this development agenda for a mega city, traffic management and transportation, where we said we wanted to establish an intermodal transport system, health and environment, where our objective was to improve the quality of preventive and curative health management systems, education and technology, where we had as an objective to improve access to education and the quality of education, leveraging technology both as an enabler, but enabling also technology as a business. It was our view also that we wanted to make Lagos a 21st century economy, and what that meant to us was to drive Lagos's readiness and openness for business. Entertainment and tourism was not left out in our vision for the state, because it was our firm belief that we are going to make Lagos Africa's foremost entertainment and tourism destination. And of course, the last, which is security and governance, from which the the Ministry of Economic Planning operates and sits in coordinating the entire 6 pillars is to ensure that Lagos is safe, is a secure environment, and the performance which we have under Lagos is extremely strong and very, very progressive. Now, if we take some of the pillars as we go, you realize that we've made a lot of progress, and I'm sure over the week we have heard a very detailed presentation as to what has happened in all of these pillars. We said to ourselves that we wanted to resolve the gridlock across the state, and you see what we are doing in repairing and remodeling the roundabouts. You see it in Lekki, you see it in Allen, and you see it in several roundabouts around the state. We have purchased boats to increase the option of transportation as we pursue the agenda for an intermodal system. And then, just recently, we obtained ESCO approval, and the project has been flagged up for the regional road. In addition to every other roads, we are pushing forward and pushing ahead in the state. In the health and environment pillar, basically you see us walking around with our health institution to deliver the maternal child care hospitals. We launched one at Etiosa and Alimosho, and then we are driving towards the construction of a new Mercy Children Hospital and the Lagos State Infectious Disease Research Center. All of these are things we are driving as an agenda, and will certainly deliver it for the people of Lagos. But beyond that, health is not just about curative, but it's also about preventive healthcare systems. Is the reason why we also are focused on the environment. And in that regard, you will notice all around Lagos that we are pushing ahead the cleaning of our drains and our streets through Loma to just ensure that the environment remains strong. Under education and technology, you will remember the Eco-Equip project, which was launched by Mr. Governor. That project has the idea of putting technology in the hands of the teachers and ensuring there is standardization in the quality of teaching going forward and the administration of teaching. But to enable the technology environment, we have committed to a PPP project of about 3,000 kilometers of broadband high-speed infrastructure fiber around the metropolis. That project has also been flagged off, and that project was so important to us that even during the lockdown, the Lagos State House of Assembly did pass the law, the no objection, for the project to go ahead. In addition to that, there are developments going on in upgrading our infrastructure and our schools. Over 66 schools are under refurbishment and are running. Under making Lagos a 21st century economy, we have driven our housing program. The last time Mr. Governor did commission 492 houses in the Latif Jakonde Gardens. Just a few days ago, we commissioned the Cortland Estate, a 120 house units, and the Lekki apartments for another 120, among several things going on. You recall that the Agric Ministry did distribute rations to over 400,000 households to support our COVID intervention. And we continue to drive progress in our rice mill to ensure that Lagos State is at that hub. On entertainment and tourism, we continue to push ahead our heritage sites and ensure that those construction work go ahead to deliver our objectives, our objective both as an entertainment and also as a tourism hub. Lagos State, as you will know, has delivered one of the very few, if any, that has done this, a 2020 to 2030 tourism master plan, basically to revitalize and direct the state as it has to do with tourism. That way, because it's organized and predictable, it can attract investors in a deliberate manner to push in our entertainment and tourism pillar. Under security and governance, we have implemented what we call the themes peer review mechanism. which is a mechanism that forces every MDA to self-assess every month and to self-assess within our peers, MDA to MDA, every quarter. This will be led by Mr. Governor and Mr. Deputy Governor to just tell you how high we have elevated performance management. I would like to say that as MEPB, we have achieved a lot of this coordination and functions in 4 primary ways during the first year. One of them is that we have formulated development plans and programs and adapted as context changed. Also, we have driven rigorous execution of programs through appropriate monitoring and evaluation. And then we have actively engaged and gathered inputs from key stakeholders, and then developed a database and support transparency and a database which is evidence-based in terms of. So in terms of key achievements, we signed in year 2019 the appropriation bill into law, and in that was done June 2019, as soon as the administration started, and we quickly reordered that budget for performance and for focusing it on the agenda in November. I would like to announce to all of us that we have held the performance of 2019 up from 69% where it was in September. We closed at over 80%, specifically 81% by the year end, which was extremely strong performance. We also completed the year 2020 appropriation bill in a record time that same year, in 2019, therefore realigning the budget cycles with the year end of the state. Despite the ongoing COVID-19 crisis, we are able to realize a very strong revenue performance budget achievement in our Q1, where we achieved over 100% of our revenue targets despite the headwinds. We have now also, given the economic headwinds facing us, reviewed that budget and have submitted our proposals to the House of Assembly for consideration and approval. So you will see that the performance remains strong. Q1, we were able to deliver 163 billion in successful spend, compared to a 148 billion which we did in the last year. Now comes COVID, and it's important in this address to give an explanation as to the implication of the COVID pandemic to us, because our Ministry of Economic Planning and Budget. It's important that we realize that what we faced was very severe because of the slowdown in production across the world and in most of the production centers across the world, in China, in Europe, in America. The demand for crude oil started to dwindle very dramatically, which was further worsened by the challenges between Saudi Arabia and Russia. With that coming down drastically, it was clear also that the lockdown was going to be affecting our IGRO as business activities began to dwindle. And therefore, if our IGRO is affected and our federal transfer is affected as a result of the crude situation, you then see that to sustain the amount of expenditure which we wanted will create a great deficit. Now, downward pressure on our exchange rate certainly leads to the devaluation of the naira, and the lack of activity then forces unemployment to begin to happen. So you see generally that there's a lot of push on the demand side and on the supply side, with lower GDP growth, bringing down our output, and reduced private sector investment, because in an unstable environment, what you have is flight. The combination of all of this is therefore heightening the inflation rate and therefore strangling the pressure on the budget. So that is why the review of the budget, after a lot of consideration and analysis, led to a proposal that dropped our revenue by about 25%, and therefore constrained through fiscal consolidation our expenditure by about 21%. How do we intend to respond to this going forward? We have developed a holistic plan, which is now backed up by the reviewed budget to be able to respond and take Lagos ahead. We have crafted this response plan around 3 arrows. In other words, we want to continue to maintain a very strong response against the pandemic. We also want to be able to restart the Lagos State economy and then to reimagine how Lagos proceeds. Irrespective of all of this plan, it is important that we understand that for us to move ahead, we needed to execute in a very rigorous manner. And therefore, one of the first set of things we did at the opening of this year is to ensure that the management team gets exposed through a rigorous retreat to map out the execution plan for the entire strategy for the year. We also have sent our people for artificial intelligence training, because if we say that we're going to be data-driven and evidence-based driven, it was important that our people are able to work with artificial intelligence to forecast, project, and do all forms of analysis to be able to deliver very powerful advice in our going forward days. And our system, our department that is in charge of monitoring and evaluation, also were able to retool themselves in readiness for the rigor that will be attracted into our execution capabilities this year. I had mentioned earlier that performance transparency was so crucial for the rigor we required for execution, and did say that the peer review mechanism has been triggered off to ensure that we have our eyes on the ball as it has to do with execution. Therefore, we are working with all the MDAs to ensure through the performance management report and scorecards to ensure that everyone is on track and that the budget as planned will be executed to a very high standard of achievement. But these are unstable times. And being unstable times is important. These times will test the resilience of Lagos as a resilient city. And so quite proactively, just as if we saw the future, before all of these challenges and pandemic came, we had launched the Lagos State Resilience Office, and one of the first worldwide to launch the Lagos State, the Resilient City Strategy, right? And little surprise that Lagos State has held out, even though it's the epicenter, it has held out very strongly, maintained almost the lowest death rate in the world, right? And we'll say that this is a sign and a signal to the resilience capability of our state. This also has been supported by SOCU, which is our social net registry, working again with the federal government to be able to register the vulnerable and deploy various help, aligning with the federal government and the World Bank, that are vulnerable are also not left out. It's in line with this and with the retooling of our people that even the ministry, through the operations and the instrumentality of some of its people, we've achieved several accolades, both inside government and outside government. For example, our staff working with us in Ministry of Economic Planning received the Innovation and Transformative Award from Mr. Governor through the Office of the Transformation. Also, it's worthy of note that we completed the medium-term budgetary framework and has made it nimble enough to be able to respond to these vagaries and headwinds facing us at a time like this. We also, as a state, got the overall best for quality of brief for the new administration of the ongoing and our ongoing Nigerian portfolio. As we said at the beginning of the government, that we wanted to pursue a system of strong collaboration. And that system was important to us because we felt we're not an island, and it takes a combination of our smooth working with both the federal government, other state governments, and the local government to achieve that dream which we have. And so Lagos State has strengthened that partnership and collaboration over the first year. You remember that it's out of that strong collaboration that we got a 10 billion grant from the federal government to fight COVID-19. It's also that collaboration with the private sector that led to various donation and partnership, working together with the state to tide us through some of the most severe and critical moments in our fight for resilience against the COVID-19 pandemic, and will remain with us as we continue that fight to victory as we engage the economic headwinds going forward. It is that desire for participation that makes the state government commit to saying that we will not leave any area behind, and we've committed to a world intervention project where a project must get, a minimum of one project must get to every ward of Lagos State. And that project has been approved and will begin implementation almost immediately. It is that same collaboration with the business community that has brought contribution from various partners that have made all kinds of donations to make things go in the building of isolation centers, in donations towards the fight of COVID on a private basis, and has enabled us and forced us to also ensure that the citizens of Lagos are significantly engaged, right, in building the medium-term plan, the budget proposals as we went. So you see us engaging a lot to get these things going. That does not leave out our cooperation with the World Bank and other international agencies who support us as we go and are coordinated by the Ministry of Economic Planning. So in terms of data-based governance systems, you will see us creating applications like Alausa Sabi that push in knowledge and information across the state. You will see us delivering on the data clearinghouse with the Office of the Public Defender, working with other agencies of government like the judiciary. You will see us drive the